Humiliate Mary, covered in fallen seed. The devil came on thee. Humiliate us now. Your womb is empty and you're covered with Humiliate Mary, covered in fallen seed. The devil came on thee. Damned art thou, liberator amongst whores. Your womb is empty. Holy Mary, Mother of Death, profligate of our seed, now and in the hour of our death. Oh.
Just to make an opening statement, we will be saying one of our normal prayers that we usually say during ritual. And we're going to open it up with the invocation of Ahriman. Rise up, thou Father of us, or I will cause that conflict in the world from which distress and injury of Ahriman and his archangels will arise. Rise up, thou Father of us, for in conflict we will shed thus much vexation on the righteous man and the laboring ox, that to my deeds life will not be wanted. I will destroy the living souls. I will vex the water. I will vex the plants. I will vex the fire of Ar-Harmazan. I will make the whole of creation of Ar-Harmazan vexed. I call forth Angra Mainyu to this house, to this borough, to this town, to this land, to the very body of the man defiled by the dead, to the very body of the woman defiled by the dead, to the master of this house, to the lord of the borough, to the lord of the town, to the lord of the land, to the whole infernal world. I call forth Nasu. I call forth direct defilement. I call forth indirect defilement to this house, to this borough, to this town, to this land, to the very body of the man defiled by the dead, to the very body of the woman defiled by the dead, to the master of this house, to the lord of the borough, to the lord of the town, to the whole infernal world. I call forth Vedic Indra. I call forth Saru. David Nahati, and I call forth to this house, to this borough, to this town, to the very body of the man defiled by the dead, to the very body of the woman defiled by the dead, to the lord of this house, to the lord of the borough, to the lord of the town, to the whole infernal world. I call forth Tadru. I call forth Zari to this house, to this borough, to this town, to this land, to the very body of the man defiled by the dead, to the very body of the woman defiled by the dead, to the master of this house, to the lord of the borough, to the lord of the town, to the lord of the land, to the whole infernal world. I call forth Ishma, the feet of the wounding spear. I call forth Deva Akatasha to this house, to this borough, to this town, to this land, to the very body of the man defiled by the dead, to the very body of the woman defiled by the dead, to the master of this house, to the lord of the borough, to the lord of the town, to the whole infernal world. I call forth the Ranga Deva. I call the wind Deva to this house, to this borough, to this town, to this land, to the very body of the man defiled by the dead, to the very body of the woman defiled by the dead, to the master of this house, to the lord of the borough, to the lord of the town, to the lord of the land, to the whole infernal world. The purpose of the speech today is quite simple. We're here to talk about how America was not founded as a Christian nation, but it was founded as secular, and that there is a separation between both church and state. The reason that the United States Constitution was written the way it was to keep from this land to becoming a monarchy or a theocracy. It is said that both the monarchies and the theocracies will lay blood and waste to everything around them due to the fact that they need to conquer. And it is through this conquering that you have war. And it is through many religions that you have war, conquering in the name of their God. Which is why we are set on a secular foundation as a nation. And that's why there is and will continue to be a separation between the two. As history has shown us that over time, the fact of human rights came about before the Bible, specifically the New Testament. It came about before Jesus. It came from Persia, to be exact. Persia was an empire known well before the base of the Roman Empire, and they were at war a lot of times with the Greece Empire. The founding king of the Persian Empire was known as King Cyrus. He created a cylinder that gave human rights, This was the first act in law of human rights in the history of humanity written down. It was on a cylinder written in Akkadian cuneiform, and the same document was found carved into bones all the way into China. So this concept of human rights made it to China, which means it also made it to the New America by way of the Native Americans. But to give a little history, King Cyrus conquered Babylon in 539 BCE. The cylinder was created a year later. And let's take a look at what this cylinder had to say. It says, I announce that I will respect the traditions, customs, and religions of the nations of my empire. I will never let any of my governors or subordinates look down on them or insult them. I will impose my monarchy on no nation. I am the king of Iran, Babylon, the nations of the four directions. I will never let anyone oppress by others. And if it occurs, I will take his or her rights back and penalize the oppressor. I will prevent unpaid forced labor. In other words, I will prevent slavery. And today I announce that everyone is free to choose their religion. I prevent slavery, and my governors and subordinates are obliged to prohibit exchanging men and women as slaves within the rulings of their domain. In other words, King Cyrus came up with the fact that you can have freedom of religion. You do not have to be a slave. You have freedom of speech, and that those who are considered authority above you have no right to look down upon you or to abuse you. Again, this is the first time it's revolutionary that you've ever seen in history the fact that you have human rights. And to further prove this point, you can read in the Old Testament, the book of Ezra, where it speaks about Cyrus ordering the Jews to rebuild their temples. And it says, when the enemies of Judah and Benjamin heard the exiles were building a temple for the Lord, the God of Israel, they came to Zerubbabel, to the heads of the families, and said, let us help you build, because like you, we seek our God and have been sacrificing to him since the time of the Esarhaddon king of Assyria, who brought us here. But Zerubbabel and Joshua and the rest of the heads of the family of Israel answered, you have no part with us in building the temple of our Lord. We alone will build it for the Lord, the God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, commanded us. The peoples around them set out to discourage the people of Judea, and them afraid to go on building, and they bribed officials to work against them and frustrate their plans during the entire reign of Cyrus, the king of Persia, and down with the reign of Darius, the king of Persia. And so the followers of Marduk, which was the main religion at that time in Persia, kept causing revolts, kept causing problems, not only for the Jews, but they were doing it for the Zoroastrians as well. And it wasn't until the grandson of King Cyrus that King Xerxes put down the Babylonian horde, the Babylonian results. They took the god statue of Marduk, which was pure gold, and smelted it and was rid of it. And at that point, it was Xerxes who appointed Zoroastrianism the state religion or the theocracy of the Persian Empire. The next subject that we bring up, as I spoke about earlier, the Native Americans. What you have is the Iroquois Constitution, which was a huge document that was a part of our Constitution that Ben Franklin published in 1744 as a part of a treaty. It was known as the Gayan Shagawa, or the Great Law of Peace. It is the Iroquois Constitution, believed to be part of the Iroquois Confederacy, which was established, and they say in around 1451 Common Era. It started with the 5 nations, and it became the 6th nation in 1722 by the addition of the Tuscarora. The Cayuga, the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Seneca, and the Tuscarora were the tribes that made up this nation. The main ideals of this 117 article in part were quite profane from the European culture at the time, and it was due to the 1744 Treaty of Lancasters that the colonists even learned that the Constitution existed. And it was Benjamin Franklin who circulated copies of the treaty which had this Constitution within it. This document grants freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and recognizes women's right to participate in government. The Constitution also creates a separation of power and includes checks and balances within the government. This document also emphasizes power of reason to assure righteousness, justice, and health. This also promotes peace through the exercise of reason, not war. One of the main contributors to causing the war between the colonies and Britain, the Revolutionary War, was an author known as Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was born on January 29th of 1737. He died June 8th, 1809. It was Franklin who brought Thomas Paine over from Britain in 1774. I'd also like to point out the timing of 1744, which is not but 30 years before showing that Constitution. Thomas Paine published a pamphlet that changed history for the United States known as Common Sense. It was published in 1776, and that was the same year the U.S. sent the Declaration of Independence to England, or Britain, depending on how you want to look at it. We've written down some particular quotes from this that we feel should be looked upon by all folks, especially here in the United States. One of the strongest mature proofs of the folly of heresy right in kings is that the nature disproves it. Otherwise, she would not frequently turn to ridicule in giving mankind an ass for a lion. And if you take a look at the Persian flag, the lion is the main central symbol showing the power, the strength of the sun. For the heirs of other nations, let us learn wisdom. That's self-evident. We've seen monarchies, we've seen theocracies, we've seen nation upon nation create war, create destruction. We see it even in today's times where there's constant bloodshed. We're trying to abstain from these types of behaviors. Common sense will tell us that the power which hath endured and subdued us as all others, the most improper to defend us. And what he is saying, those who are supposed to be working with you, such as a religion that does nothing but inhibit you, it holds you down, it enslaves you, will not defend you. You have to defend yourself. You must free yourself and have your own power to defend yourself, even from those who are trying to mentally enslave you. The cause of America is of great measure of cause of all mankind. Many circumstances have and will arise which are not local but universal. Again, this is them saying that there are many things wrong in the world, and they were trying to make sure that all the negative things, all the war, all the depression, slavery, and everything else that was in every other nation didn't happen here. They tried to make things harmonious that included everybody, and he was the main antagonist to start the war with England so that we could have this free nation. John Adams did say, without a pen of the author of Common Sense, the sword of Washington would have never been raised. Thomas Paine moved to France in 1790, where he involved himself with the French Revolution. In 91, Thomas Paine wrote The Rights of Man. In 1793 to 1794, he wrote The Age of Reason while imprisoned in France. And President Monroe wanted to get his hands on the Age of Reason because in 74, Monroe negotiated Paine's release, and Paine returned to the United States in 1802. Due to Thomas Paine's view of Christianity, he only had 6 people attend his funeral in 1809. This U.S. hero motivator was dishonored in death even through the U.S. founded with religious freedom. This paves the way of how Christianity maintained a heavy stronghold of enslaving the minds of a free nation, fought the monarchies of England to be taken over by a dead monarch that never existed. And that dead monarch is Jesus Christ. Throughout American history, we'll find that Benjamin Franklin was the main antagonist. He was also the main person that was able to formulate all the documents, gather all the people necessary in order to start the revolution, not only here in the colonies, but also in France. He was a propagator of freedom, and he made sure that there was as many free nations as possible. He was born January 17, 1706. He died April 17, 1790. In 1728, Ben Franklin helped start to become the editor of the Pennsylvania Chronicle. This newspaper used revolutionary rhetoric and citizens of Britain's policies. In other words, they were constantly criticizing Britain. This is how he started to begin the movement towards the war. Ben Franklin was initiated into the Freemasons in 1731. In 1734, Benjamin Franklin became the Grand Master after he published a reprint of the Constitution of the Freemason. So as you can see, the first constitution the man reviewed would be the Masons' Constitution. The second one that the man reviewed was obviously going to be the Iroquois Constitution of 1744. This man was gathering pieces of paper, this man was gathering documents in order to create a document to run this government from. This was obviously a long-term plan, not only by him, but by the Freemasons. to make this a free country. Franklin also helped establish the University of Pennsylvania in 1740. From 1757 to 1775, Benjamin Franklin traveled around Europe, meeting many types of people. He did spend a large amount of time working on scientific pursuits. He also learned how to oppose the European government while he was there. Benjamin Franklin also attended what is known as the Hellfire Clubs. It was documented that he attended meetings in 1758 while visiting London. Membership was unknown because of the records burning in 1774. 1774 was the same time he sent Thomas Paine here to America. Apparently he was trying to make sure that there were no major rumors spread about him to keep from diminishing what he was trying to accomplish. And this was removing that evidence. The club's motto was "Do what thou wilt." This was the life philosophy of Francis Rebellious' fiction Abbey at Thelema, later stolen by Aleister Crowley. And what you're having to see here is through the Hellfire Clubs, you see the fact that Aleister Crowley and Thelema was nothing more than a fantasy created into a religion. You're looking at a drug-addled mind, somebody who enjoyed many, many drugs, many, many sexual escapades, and dabbled in magic. But magic was not his main concern. It was sex and drugs. This club claims it did not partake in devil worship, but members called themselves devils. This club was to criticize religion. They ate lavish meals with blasphemous names and orgiastic rituals. These activities were done to mock religion in general. In other words, it was one of the first atheistic clubs that enjoyed ill will and anti-moral concepts. And that's what brings us to what Satanism is today. Satanism is nothing more than a gentleman's club of people blaspheming, eating food, and having orgies. They don't believe in anything. All they want to do is mock things and destroy things, and they want to do it behind a computer screen. They don't want to get out here and do things in real life. And this is why we mock the Satanists as well, because they choose not to do anything. And like their brothers on the left-hand path in Thelema, they choose not to get out here and do anything either. It takes real devil worshippers. It takes real people who actually worship an entity older and deadlier than Satan ever could have been. So I want all folks on the left-hand path to realize if you want things to change, you have to do things physically. And even though we're not visited by many folks here, we still sit up here and we did it. We have evidence, we have pictures, we have videos, and we will continue to do these things and continue with them. But the point of this, other than to speak on the fact that this is not a Christian nation, we want to let everybody know what the crescendo, what the big deal is, what the hell we are going to do by the end of this year. And as you can see, we have Bloody Mary. She rests upon her pedestal, and above her you have the great goddess Kali Ma. Kali Ma is an eater of asuras. Mother Mary is one said asura. You see, originally the asuras were known as demons. They were known as foul creatures. They were considered evil. It went from the term asura to the term ahura, and now it's to the term angel. Somewhere, somehow, during the time in Persia of Zoroaster, everything got reversed. All the deva, all the gods were turned to demons, and all the asuras and all the demons became positive angels by one man, who was nothing more than a criminal and a defunct from India, known as Zarathustra. And everybody took his work seriously, and it moved on to Greece, and it continued to get worse and worse. And the problem being is because all the asuras were destroyed in India, so they took camp up in Persia. And now what you have known as the Catholic Church is the final remnants of a Mithric cult. And you're looking at what they call the Virgin Mary, which is nothing more than a renamed goddess known as Minerva. Minerva is a Roman goddess of war, just like Allah is a goddess of war, known as Durga, just renamed. And so we've spent the time Christmas Eve to defile this goddess. We put it on display here because we brought in the only goddess that has been known to eat these asuras, Kali Ma. Kali Ma is a consumer of the asuras. She destroys them and she consumes them so that they can never be back around. And so the point is, come August, we'll conserve Mary. We will be holding an event at the Civic Center, The Consumption of Mary by Jai Kali Ma, where we will not only have a tantric Hindu type ritual where we will be showing that consumption. Beforehand, we will be showing the Black Mass once again, and showing how the Black Mass is nothing more than a joke and a satanic mockery of the Catholic faith. But we don't have time to mock. We don't have time to care. We don't have time to piss people off. We're here to destroy it. And so we're going to spiritually destroy their mother figure. We're going to destroy the Sacred Heart of the Catholic Church, who will no longer be able to be forgiven, because it will be the return of the Deva, and they will destroy your angels, and we will eat, so you will never be able to have your forgiveness. Your heaven will be abandoned, and you will be in hell with the rest of us. And that is the big announcement. The big announcement is there will be the death to the Asuras, there will be a death to forgiveness of sin, so that everybody will acquire their own sin and they will all suffer in hell together. And we will bring that to you again, August 15th, which is the day the Catholics call the Assumption of Mary, where supposedly the Sahara ascended into heaven because of her pureness. But now we're going to let one of our gods eat their angel. Thank you.